Hello, everybody. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a long forgotten TV show. This was called The Master, and it was made in 1966 by Southern Television. The Master, unfortunately, is completely missing. It's gone forever. There is not a single frame that survives of it, which is a real shame because it seemed to be great fun. It was a children's television programme with some great became cult TV actors in it, an adventure story. And there's nothing left of it. All we've got left are just a few stills, just a few frames from it. And what I intend to do with this little video is show you these. And you can all look at them and regret the fact that this TV show doesn't exist anymore. So, the story of The Master. It was commissioned by Southern Independent Television Network. So it was a production by them. And the filming took place in late 1965. It cost quite a lot of money at the time. It was based on a book by T.H. White, a novel called, funnily enough, The Master, and so it was an adaptation. Southern Television had so much confidence in this, they invested £6,000 per episode, which, for the time, was an awful lot of money, and introduced it with a full-colour TV feature in TV Times. And it became... It worked. It provided apparently a pivotal moment in children's television, mixing elements of standard adventure with James Bond type villains and science fiction. So what was it all about? Well, it involved two children, Judy and Nicky, and their dog Jokey, who becomes stranded on Rockall. You know, that little island in the middle of the in the North Atlantic, which is a small uninhabited rocky inlet islet. And they find after landed there, it's actually hollow, and it's got caverns and mysterious chambers and even a place where we could land helicopters and things. And it was actually inhabited by an evil genius who was known as the Master. The Master was played by Olaf Pooley, who I'm sure people listening to this will probably recognise from playing, I think it was Professor Stallman in Doctor Who Inferno with John Pertwee. So he was the villain. So he played the Master, who was apparently 157 years old and communicated with telepathy, which he could also use to control people's minds. He also had a machine, which he called, I kid you not, his vibrator ray, which he wanted to use to take over the world. And it's up to our intrepid kids to try and stop him. Nicky, the girl, she was resistant to his telepathy, and the Master hoped to train him as a successor. And Judy was more susceptible to the Master's mind control. Jokey, Judy's mongrel dog, was about the size of a Skye Terrier. Also in this series featured were the Duke and Duchess, who were the twins' father, because they're very well-to-do, middle-class, as kids always were back then in these TV programmes, or often were anyway. The twins' father, the Duke, lived in a estate in England called Gaunt's Godstone. And the Duchess, the twins' mother, the first name was Fanny. So I'm not going to go into a TV series with a Fanny and a vibrator ray too much, but I think you get the idea. Mr. Pierpoint appeared as well, the Duchess's brother, who's the twins' uncle. So, and the Master himself, he had a number of people working for him who also featured in this. Now, none of these would be allowed today because they were, we could regard them as somewhat contentious. There's a chap known only as the Chinaman, possibly Mr. Blenkinsop in the book, and his name means the golden tiger in the tea forest. The master befriended him at first at Oxford University, apparently because he found the Chinese language superior to English for expressing his ideas, and how he and Blenkinsop communicate by telepathy. He also has Pinky, who was a slave. I won't go into exactly why, but I think you can probably work it all out for yourselves. He was mute, his tongue having been cut out, and he was the island's cook. Also had squadron leader Frinton, played by George Baker. He was the pilot of a helicopter which carried mail and supplies between Rockall and Ireland. He moves away from the master and ends up befriending Judy and Nicky, and ends up helping them to escape. And lastly, there was Dr. Totty McTurk, played by Dad's Army regular John Laurie. Originally a ship's surgeon called Jones. Apparently, although he was probably Welsh in origin, he puts on various accents, Irish, Scottish, Cockney and Australian, whilst talking to the children. This sounds like cult genius, this does. Can you imagine that? So there's Private Fraser talking all these weird languages. So the 12-year-old twins were kidnapped by the master and his henchmen, who planned to dominate the world with his vibrator ray, which apparently could destroy atomic bombs. But he doesn't count the interference of the children and of their dog. The master began a bit like an Enid Blyton story, with the two children, Nicky, played by Paul Guess, and Judy, played by Adrienne Poster, and their dog, out on a sailing expedition, became marooned on the island of Rockall. The series then continued through a sci-fi chiller, as the island was inhabited by this 150-year-old emaciated criminal, and the kids were helped by their father, played by Richard Vernon, and squadron leader Frinton by George Baker, who I just briefly mentioned. Now, it was featured in the TV Times, and apparently Olaf Pooley was actually interviewed for it, and he stated he had to, because he had to look 150 years old. His makeup took 4 hours a day and involved heavily wrinkled plastic skin to put on him, liquid rubber and tissue paper. And he stated, once the makeup was done, I couldn't eat until we finished work for the day, or else my face would have cracked, he said. So apparently for lunch, he regularly sipped soup through a straw. Now, The Master was Southern TV's first children's serial for the National Network. Southern Programme Controller Barclay Smith stated, "We decided this was an area of TV where we could make a special contribution." Well, perhaps they succeeded. Yeah. So we had these 6 episodes. They consisted of dates. Transmission were Tuesday 11th of January 1966. Episode 1, The Yellow Hands. Episode 2, a week later, 18th of January, introducing Totty McTurk. Episode 3, Behind the Antlers, which is the 25th of January. 1st of February 1966, The Squadron Leader. 8th of February 1966, Episode 5, The World of Disbelief. And Episode 6, 15th of February 66, Death by Misadventure. At the end of it, I am led to believe from the book, the little dog Jokey saves the day when I think he hounds the master over a cliff and he falls into the sea. I've looked at the original book and it's sort of rather slightly ambiguous as to what actually happens. From what I can gather, this is what happens. There's not much really to say because there's such little surviving about it. However, I do have a little quote here. This is John Braben, the producer of ITV's children's Tuesday science fiction serial The Master, stated in an interview this in the, I think it was TV Times. In television, he said, the young actor or actress has to comply with some strict disciplines as adult actors. It's not a game. The demands for serial made on Paul and Adrian were exacting. John Braben did not want the kind of story which had them standing around as observers while the adult stars got on with the real work. There were times when they're out on their own, he said, but never let anybody down and probably feel they are a couple of veterans. Some young actors have a reputation for tantrums, but there was nothing like that about Paul and Adrian, said John. They're very nice people as well as good actors. For example, Adrian, a typical 16-year-old, that's what it said at the time, had to get into the habit of becoming a 12-year-old for a role as Paul's sister. And Paul had his transformation problems too. He had to do a Jekyll and Hyde on himself because he had just finished being one of Fagin's tough gang in Oliver. There was a physical change for Paul as well. He had to have his blonde hair dyed darker to match that of his sister, Adrian. Both Adrian and Paul made pals out of Jokey, the terrier in the story. Paul won his way into the dog's heart by the simple method of always carrying a chocolate with him. Apparently this caused a problem on the scene when Jokey had to be sternly persuaded not to spend his time trying to stick his nose into Paul's hand. Jokey may have got the chocolates, but apparently, according to TV Times, that Paul and Adrian took the acting cake. So there we are. I mean, there's not really much else I can really say about it. So I hope if you remember this, please do let me know and see if you've got any memories from it. Wouldn't it be fantastic if one day it turned up in a pile of forgotten TV programmes? You know, it's because looking at the cast list, it's such a shame that it went. Everybody was in it. Everybody was in it. John Woodnutt, Olaf Pooley, as you know, Richard Vernon, Thomas Baptiste, John Laurie, George Baker, you know, loads and loads of wonderful actors. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I think I've probably talked too much, and I hope you enjoyed this little look at a long-forgotten TV programme. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.